Welcome to Montgomery County Council wrap-up for the month of September. We start with the kickoff of a new campaign that protects the thousands of residents who rent property in Montgomery County. Renters have rights. That's what county leaders want the thousands of residents who are tenants to know. The campaign kicked off at the Pooks Hill Tower in Bethesda.
It's really something that is very, very, very important to our county.
And it's the result of recent legislation passed by the council that steps up housing inspections and tenant advocacy. Legislation that was years in the making.
This is what matters with legislation. It's one thing to pass a law. It's another thing to talk about a law. It's another thing to actually go sit down and do the work to make it happen.
It is incumbent upon county government and all levels of government within and around this region to provide safe and adequate housing for all of our residents.
The updated law enhances code enforcement by requiring every multifamily dwelling be inspected every 2 years. Those results will be used to put together a list of problem properties that will be inspected on an annual basis.
The inspection program is pure gold. If we go through this county, we do all the buildings, we focus on the older ones and the ones with the most violations, we can bring this housing stock up to a level of decency that it has not been at in many, many years. And once it's there, we can keep it there.
The Renters Have Rights campaign directs tenants to call 311 if they have complaints or questions about their properties. The advice is free and confidential.
This is a great day for Montgomery County's 3.
Councilmember Tom Hucker is one of the co-sponsors of the bill.
Breaking news, a massive fire in Maryland taking down an apartment complex.
Last summer's fatal explosion at the Flower Branch Apartments was in his district.
For too long, we've been hearing about a lot of severe problems in our aging housing stock, and no one in Montgomery County should have to put up with mold and mildew, with rats and roaches, and too often we don't hear from our tenants. So I'm really confident that this three-pronged approach, making sure our tenants know that they have rights, making sure they know they can call 311 to bring those problems to the county government, and making sure that we have the housing inspectors on the ground to get into these problem properties. I'm really confident that's going to improve the lives of thousands of people in Montgomery County.
For more information on the Renters Have Rights campaign, visit the county's Department of Housing and Community Affairs website. Also this month, the council heard testimony from dozens of residents from both sides on short-term housing services like Airbnb.
Through some short-term rentals, the Airbnb design helps foster community and connection instead of isolation and separation. Airbnb is making it possible for me to stay in my home and improvement. That makes the neighbors happy.
The introduction of Airbnbs and consequent short-term renters will have a negative impact on the close-knit neighborhood fabric.
I rent out 3 rooms and I live in the other room, and even after about 150 guests, I've never been aware of any problems whatsoever that affect my neighbors or the neighborhood in general.
More than 24 concerned citizens turned out for the public hearing on proposals before the council that would regulate short-term residential services like Airbnb, Flipkey, and HomeAway. The bill was introduced by Councilmember Hans Remer.
You can't put the genie back in the bottle. This is a social change that's just happening, and we have to kind of adapt to that and figure out how to respond to that new reality. So what we heard tonight was very compelling stories from people who are hosts.
My guests are respectful of my home, my neighbors, and the local community, and they spend money at Silver Spring cafes, restaurants, grocery stores, theaters, and local shops.
And we seem to have a general accommodation from both the hotel industry and the Airbnb type services, which I've really been at opposite ends of this issue, but they're both comfortable with our approach. So I think that speaks to a well-crafted approach here.
Under the proposal before the council, property owners who want to rent their homes on a short-term basis would need to get a license from the county. That would include paying a fee and notifying neighbors of rental activity.
That overall, folks understand that Airbnb already exists in a lot of our neighborhoods, and so it really is about kind of tightening down on the way in which these are operated, making sure that we're getting the revenue that's appropriate, and making sure that the safety of our overall community and the things that we've put in place to protect our community are there, and everybody's held to those same sorts of standards.
The proposed approach is designed to allow part-time home sharing while banning what would essentially be hotels in residential areas.
We believe that collectively they failed to provide a viable structure for enforcement and have the potential to raise significant financial and safety risks for our community and for the county.
A major issue is the impact of short-term rental property on neighbors, particularly if the rental competes for available parking space. Montgomery Village has over 20 neighborhoods. Even in neighborhoods with traditional single-family homes where owners park largely in their private driveways and garages, the streets are often used for parking as well by that community and neighboring communities.
I think when you start from the perspective of we want to allow people to do home sharing, but we don't want property investors to just come in and snap up homes and then turn our housing stock into commercial enterprises and neighborhoods. When you make that kind of determination, everything else kind of flows from there.
Because we are hospitable by nature and enjoy people, as all the people at this table seem to do, our unit is full.
But it was clear, those who testified as Airbnb hosts not only see the service as a way to supplement their income, but also a way to enrich their lives.
I'm close to NIH. The majority of my guests are interns, medical residents. They don't always have a lot of money. It's costing them a lot to come here. So I feel like I'm doing something really good for not only the community and for my bank account, but also for the world when it comes to supporting these people that are doing really important research.
It's the new assisted living to a degree. What I want to explain is I am home, but not alone. If I stay home alone, feeling isolated, according to AARP, the effect on my health would be as negative as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But I don't need a friendly visitor volunteer for an hour once a week from a local nonprofit. I have my own active friendly visitor program. It's Airbnb, and my visitors stay overnight.
The Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee will have 2 work sessions later this month before the measures go before the council. Council members were joined by County State's Attorney John McCarthy to praise the success of the new mental health court that works to keep the mentally ill out of jail. On any given day, about 20 to 30% of the inmates at the Clarksburg Correctional Facility suffer from some sort of mental illness. In hopes of reducing those numbers, county officials developed a mental health court to divert low-level offenders suffering from mental illness from jail.
The bottom line is this is just smart, good government. This is smart public policy.
The mental health court here in Montgomery County is coming up on its 1-year anniversary. The County Council approved funding for the program in its budget. County Council member Sidney Katz served on the original task force that implemented the mental health court.
This is a way to change someone's life for the positive. We talk about what it costs. Well, it costs not only the cost to incarcerate somebody, it costs their families because they are being incarcerated. It costs the fact that they're not being able to work, and if they are able to work, and all of those things associated.
Participants in the mental health court take part in the program voluntarily, and the treatment plan is individually developed. Defendants report to a judge each week rather than a probation officer. Officials say the recidivism rate since the program has been introduced has gone down.
It is perfectly all right to admit that you have an illness in your brain, just like you would admit that you have an illness in your gut or in your shoulder or in your leg. Then more people will get treatment earlier before they end up interacting with the criminal justice system.
Demand for this service is growing. There is currently a waiting list to participate in the mental health court. How the county moves ahead with this initiative is something council members say they will consider carefully.
At the end of the day, this is a money saver. The people I can treat in mental health who can present once and then don't come back take an enormous load off the rest of the system. We need to figure out how to not only take the load off the system, but to help these people. These are people who are presented with issues that the choices they make aren't really clear choices like most of the rest of us make.
I think this is really a great day for Montgomery County, and thank you to all the members of the council for their support on this issue.
And wrapping up the month, a proposal to raise the county's minimum wage to $15 per hour was debated and discussed at an open public hearing.
Employers who are trying to survive and thrive right here.
The council hearing room was at overflow capacity as hundreds of residents showed up to listen and weigh in on this latest proposal to raise the minimum wage.
I I'm again testifying in opposition to the minimum wage, which would increase the county's minimum wage to $15 by 2020.
So I strongly urge the council to pass the clean $15 wage without exclusions or delays.
The measure has strong support from low-wage workers who are trying to make ends meet.
It's very hard today. Everything's expensive. Maryland is an expensive region of the country. I have to do many jobs.
But some business owners say raising the wage to $15 per hour would force them to close their doors.
When I started to put the numbers on paper with this increase has affected us so far and how it will affect us in the future, it became grave reality of what was to come if we do pass the increase in its current form. It will cause us to lose our business. Without a modification to the law, the way you have it written, we can't survive.
The measure passes 5-4.
The council passed its first minimum wage bill in January, but did so with a 5-4 vote. Not enough to keep the county executive from vetoing it. The bill was reintroduced with modifications, and lead sponsor Mark Elridge says the time is now to pass this proposal.
When I talk to most people, they understand perfectly well that nobody can live on $11.50 in Montgomery County. Nobody's confused because, even middle-class households, we've been cited as one of the most difficult places for middle-class folks to live. Housing costs are just way too high. And, we know that half our renters are spending over half their income on housing, and if the standard nationally is 30%, they're way over what they ought to be spending. And as long as wages are low, it's going to continue to be a problem. So it's the right thing to do.
This would give folks more purchasing power to be able to pay for all the needs they have and maybe reinvest back into the local businesses and communities and services.
Mr. Leggett has asked the county council
adopted at this pace, I am out of business. I will lose my business. I will lose my home because I mortgaged my business with my home mortgage.
Though there were 40 folks who testified on the bill, few were business owners like Ron Zimmerman. Representatives from the Chamber of Commerce were on hand on behalf of that group. They said those merchants don't want to alienate their employees by testifying against the bill.
And so when they come to express concern about this issue, and they are misrepresented in the press and maligned and called out for expressing their opinions, that's their business, that's their livelihood on the line. And so we represent them. As a member-based organization, we're here to be the voice of business.
Besides being in favor of raising the wage, one young man testified about additional struggles he faces in the working world.
There is a discrimination based on skin color or name types, and yes, even age. Though I'm an adult, I'm young. And so I am treated differently by other adults. I have certifications and training in my field, but find that biases about my age and race hold me back.
I appreciate you for showing up, because for a very long time in this conversation about who I was fighting for, I'm happy to see that someone is coming to speak up and fight for themselves about what it is and the reality that exists out there in the world. I hope that the media will report that a young black man came and talked about the disparity that continues to exist, regardless of whether the minimum wage is $15 or not, that young black men aren't getting jobs. Thank you, sir.
Mark Elridge says there is no need to make any changes to the bill that's on the table, and he's confident he has the votes to get it through.
The worry seems to be all on one end, but when you talk about people making $11.50 and wondering how they adjust to paying rent and buying food for their family, not a word from the proponents of slowing it down. So I'm not interested in delaying this. I think 5 years is plenty for small businesses. I think 3 years is absolutely appropriate. If we were like California and New York, we'd be going after the big stores in a much shorter time frame. And that's not in this bill. So I think it's fair.
For more council news and information, you can visit the website at montgomerycountymd.gov/council. I'm Susan Kennedy for County Cable Montgomery.